tonight. My name is Jennifer. I am the Public Program Coordinator for the Champaign County Forest Preserve District, and I am based out of Homer Lake Interpretive Center. If you've ever been to the Interpretive Center, we're a very small nature center located in Homer, Illinois, and normally we host lots of fun, great in-person programs, but not being able to do that this year, we are able to do some new things like offer virtual programs like this, and I am happy enough to be joined by Tara Beveroth tonight. So I'm going to introduce her and then hand things right over and then make a few more announcements before we get started. So before we get started, I want to let everyone know that this meeting is being recorded. I am going to upload it to our YouTube channel, and I will email everyone on this list once it is uploaded to YouTube, and I'll send you the link so that you can view it if you'd like to. And I assume that should be either by the end of this week or early next week, but give it a couple days to get that processed. And many of you have your video on. That's great. You definitely don't have to, completely up to you. The only request is that you keep your microphone muted for the presentation, unless you're asking a question, which we will stop at the end for questions, and possibly throughout. We'll just kind of see how it goes. But I'm going to be monitoring the chat, so if you type any questions in the chat, I will make sure that we get those answered as well during the program. And now here's a little bit about Tara. Tara is originally from Northwest Illinois, and she has joined the Illinois Natural History Survey in 2004, and she's currently an avian ecologist. She has been part of many different research projects during her career, and she currently works for the Critical Trends Assessment Program, which is a long-term monitoring program that monitors the biological condition of Illinois' forests, grasslands, and wetlands. She also coordinates the statewide Illinois Spring Bird Count and monitoring of owls and nightjars program. In the fall of 2019, she started a migratory bird banding station and continues to run that with the help of many skilled volunteers. And Tara is here tonight to tell us a little bit more about the owls of Illinois and a little bit more about some of those programs that we talked about. So without further ado, I will turn things over to you, Tara.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Let's see, another screen pulled back up here. All right. All right, so are you guys, you see, what screen do you see? Is it doing it again?
Yeah, it's the presenter. I wonder if you go to display settings, you see that on the, I don't know, or maybe you have to switch your screen because there was.
Hold on one second. Let's see. Did it swap it by any chance?
No, this is the movie that's playing.
Okay, then I don't know.
Oh, I haven't seen anything change yet, so I don't know.
Okay, hold on. Did anything change?
I didn't see anything change, but you maybe try going to just start presentation again and see if that looks like it changed. That changed.
Oh, so what does it look like now?
Now I only see the PowerPoint. I see like the slide sorter view.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is it doing that same thing again?
Yeah, maybe. Do you see where it says, yeah, see what display settings, if you can change anything there. Duplicate slideshow.
I'll just try that and see if that works. Is that okay?
Yes.
Showing two slides. Okay.
That's perfect.
All right. Okay, sorry guys. Let me move you guys over so I can see better. Thanks for having me tonight. I'm still getting a little used to the Zoom presentation, as you can tell. I really enjoy talking about owls as well as many other birds. So I'm happy I can do this for you guys tonight. And with that, I'm going to just briefly go over a quick outline. I'm going to start with a little bit of fun owl folklore and move into some natural history of owls, because that's what really helps when trying to go out and look for these guys. And then from there, I'll go and discuss each of our Illinois owls and talk about some challenges, unfortunately, that owls face, and follow that up with some owl prowling tips and what owl prowling is exactly, and talk about attracting owls if any of you are interested in that. All right. So the reason owls are so interesting is because they've been around for a long time. So the oldest known owl species is the barn owl. And so that species they've known of that species for 25 to 20 million years. And scientists actually have also found unknown owl bones dating back to over 55 million years ago. So again, owls, they've been around for a while. In terms of owl folklore, Aboriginal tradition actually holds that owls guard women's souls, and because of this, sorry, I'm gonna hide that, they should protect their female kin. So that's kind of interesting. Also, as you can see on this lovely statue on the slide, Athena, the Greek goddess of wisdom, and also known as a warrior goddess, she's linked to owls. So it was thought to see one of these during war was good luck. Owls are also thought to guide people from life to death. And excuse my lack of tea on that though right there that I just noticed. And this is primarily because they have been seen in cemeteries, and cemeteries historically have a lot of trees in them, making good owl habitat. Also, in some parts of the world, they are associated with witchcraft and have been killed because of it. And their parts have been used for folk medicines and magic rituals. So yes. And then finally, in Asia and South America, their feathers are actually thought to bring good luck and help one's love life. So if anybody needs help with their love life, there you go. There's a lot of other information out there, and you could probably do a whole talk on owl folklore because it's really so interesting. I like to put this slide in because I think it's funny. Owls are everywhere. They're so popular. I mean, I have a little, I don't know if you guys can see this. I got this little stuffed animal owl here too, and I've got all kinds of owl trinkets myself, but people like owls. So if you ever want something owl related, you probably won't have a problem finding it. They're found throughout the world. We actually have around close to 270 species in the world. They have been found everywhere except for Antarctica until recently. I found out a barn owl has been found there. Around 68% of them do live in the southern hemisphere, while 32% live in the northern hemisphere. Also, these guys probably, I think it's around 75% of owls are dependent upon forest habitat. So forest is really important for owls. There are two main families of owls. There's the Strigidae, which are what are considered your true owls, and there's over 200 species of those. And then there's the Titonidae family, and those are your barn owls, which is what you're seeing in the back of this slide. And these guys, they are different, and you'll notice that they're different. They have these nice heart-shaped faces. They have smaller eyes than the true owls do, and you know, they're just, and they usually have shorter tails too, but you can definitely tell the difference. Here in North America, we have 19 species of owls. And while if you're out looking for owls, it can sometimes be challenging to tell them apart because you may think a lot of them look the same. But if you're looking at this slide here, you can see that they are really quite different. And you just need to know those characteristics to look for when out looking for the birds themselves. You know, do they have black eyes? Do they have yellow eyes? Do they have ear tufts on their head? Do they not have ear tufts? So things like that we'll talk about further down in the talk. Some fun information about owls that I always like to share is kind of size related, as you can tell. So the largest owl by weight is actually the Blakiston's fish owl, which is anywhere from 6.5 to 7.9 pounds. We don't have that owl here. It's actually endangered over on the other side of the world, unfortunately. And they are hard to study because there just aren't a lot of them. The largest owl and overall owl considered in the world is the Eurasian eagle owl. It has a wingspan of about 4 to 6 feet. In terms of the greatest body length of any owl, it's the great gray owl. It has around a 2.8 foot body length, and it's pretty much all feathers because they're actually not that large of a bird. They're just a lot of feathers. And then the smallest owl is the little elf owl, and that's the little guy down there. This owl could fit in the palm of your hand. It's around 31 grams. And if you want some perspective on that, we all probably know what a house sparrow looks like. That's about the same size as a house sparrow. I found this figure and I thought it was really neat. It's just kind of a neat figure showing all the different sizes that owls can be, from the little tiny one, the elf owl down there, all the way to the great gray owl, which is our greatest in length owl. So just kind of a fun chart. If you've ever wondered how long owls live, well, it's probably no surprise that wild owls do not live as long as captive owls. They have to still worry about predators and finding food and diseases and all that stuff that the captive ones don't necessarily have to worry about as much because they are being taken good care of, hopefully. The average lifespan of most owls in the wild is usually around 9 to 10 years. Barn owls usually average about 4 years. In captivity, the greatest record I could find was of a great horned owl that lived 50 years, which is pretty darn old. Snowy owls and a few others have lived to be around 28 years old in captivity. So why are owls so cool? Well, there's many reasons owls are cool. As you know, they're fun to look at. This is a long-eared owl here, and I like this owl because it's just a funny, neat looking owl. Owls have big heads and they have short tails, and they have these really neat facial discs with large eyes. And they're really good at camouflage, which is good for the type of behavior they display, especially when they're hunting. They also have really soft feathers. If you've ever been fortunate enough to touch an owl, you'll note that they're just extremely soft. They have different kinds of feathers that all play a part in, how they hunt and sometimes even things like mating. So their feathers are unique for sure. I wanted to point out the ear tufts because long-eared owls, those aren't actually ears, those are feathers on top of its head. But those tufts do serve purposes. Some even have them on the side, they stick out on the sides of their head. But these are thought to help with mood recognition. So what the owl might be, what kind of behavior it might be displaying at the time. Also with species recognition between different species, and then predator avoidance. They can make themselves look bigger and possibly scarier with those tufts. So one of my favorite things to do in 5th grade was dissect owl pellets. I thought it was great fun, and I still think it's fun. If you've never done it, you should try it. It's finding out, we're really lucky that owls are it's so easy to study their diet because they pretty much regurgitate it. And so, they're not like most other animals where it can be a little more challenging to study what they eat sometimes. But as some of you probably already know, they can't digest fur, feathers, bone, teeth, claw, chitin. That's that exoskeleton outer layer of the insects, because many owls do eat insects. And they also have these 2-part stomachs. So the owl eats its prey item, and it can eat more than one prey item depending upon the species. And then it'll move those into that first part of the stomach where it'll start, you know, with digestive enzymes, and then it'll move into that second part of the stomach where it'll become the pellet. That's where everything that can't move through the rest of the digestive system sits and will later be regurgitated before that owl can take its next meal. I think they usually take about 10 hours around there before they'll regurgitate and be able to take their next meal. And here is a fun video showing this. And I'm going to see if I can zoom ahead a little. Whoops, sorry. I was going to see if I could zoom ahead a little bit. It's not going to let me here, so we'll just watch this. So this video is, I don't know, you may think it's gross because it's actually going to show this barred owl casting out a pellet. And so, you know, these guys can do it during the day. That's usually when I often see these barred owls, is during the day. But you'll watch, this guy's about to regurgitate a pellet. There it goes. Now he can take his next meal. Oops, it's gonna make me go to the end. There we go.
Pellets are a really good way to look for them as well. Like if you, that's a good sign that you have an owl hanging out somewhere, is if you find the pellets.
Yep, and I'll talk more about that later too, so you guys will kind of get an idea of how to find them, because it's really, as Jennifer said there, it really helps when looking for owls. So, and yeah, pellets are fun. They're a good indicator. I'm going to move into eyesight. So eyesight in owls, they have phenomenal eyesight. They have these tubular eyes, as you can see in this diagram. Unlike our eyes, which are not as they're not tubular, like they have these sclerotic rings right here on the sides of their eyes, which are actually bony, so they can't move their eyes around like we can. But fortunately, they can move their heads around really, really well. Their eyes are super large, maybe even the most front situated of any other bird group. They also have an extremely large number of rods, and this allows them to see better at night. In our eyes, we have rods and cones. The cones allow us to help see color, and the rods allow us to help see black and white. So owls usually have many more rods than cones. They also have 3 eyelids. So they have one that goes up, you know, and then they have one that goes down. So they have a blinking eyelid, and then they have a sleeping eyelid, and then they have this nictitating eyelid that comes, as you can see in the picture, right, that across the eye. And that can help when the owls are actually hunting and going for their prey, because they can actually see through that eyelid so that they may not get hurt from whatever they're going in for the kill. So head rotation in owls. We know they can rotate their heads really well. They can bob their heads really well. Well, Johns Hopkins actually did a study because they were comparing the way humans rotate their necks with the way owls do it. And owls, they do have more vertebrae in their neck. They have 14 compared to our 7. But if our heads were to turn as fast as an owl's head, we would probably get whiplash, and in some cases, you could probably even have a stroke. But owls have these specialized systems that allow them to have these blood reservoirs. So their blood vessels actually get larger as their head turns. And because of these blood reservoirs, they don't have to worry about things like having a stroke. So they have this complex vascular network. They also have larger holes in their necks or in their vertebrae, so they can twist and not hurt those vessels. So it's pretty neat what they can do. We all probably know owls are very quiet. They have silent flight. They have comb-like structures on the ends of their flight feathers that allow them to have lower wing loading and to not be heard. And so this allows them to be such excellent hunters. and help them absorb sound frequencies. Also, I just put a few different species on this table right here to show you some different wing loads of different birds. You know, there's the barn swallow, which, you know, this is a bird that is an aerial insectivore. So it's flying all over the place and having to fly quite often. So it makes sense that that would have a really low wing load. But the barn owl, another species that hunts quite a lot, has a really low wing load too, which makes sense. All right. Here is a video that was produced by the BBC, and I think it's really neat because it shows, oops, sorry. I can get it going. Maybe it's not going to show. It may not show.
Yeah, we're not seeing it, huh?
Okay, that's fine. It showed in my practice that I did with a couple of people, but clearly it's not going to show here. I'll just tell you about it. So what this video is it actually, it's kind of a neat video. So it compares a pigeon with a peregrine falcon and also a barn owl. And so it shows all three of the species, and it shows the pigeon fly across first, and the pigeon just makes all kinds of noise because it has more wing loading. And then it shows the peregrine, which doesn't have quite as much. And then it shows the barn owl with just virtually no striations at all. So it's kind of a neat video, but I apologize, it's not working. Oh, well.
Yeah, there was a question in the chat. Someone asked if you can
Sure.
describe wing loading a little further, but I think you possibly just did. So I think that answered the question probably, but if it didn't, let us know if you still have that question, and we'll make sure we revisit that.
Yeah, so you don't, I mean, the greater the wing loading, the more energy you're going to be using. So you don't want to be using a lot of energy. And like in the case of, like, say, a barn owl, you know, these are birds that swoop around and they're flying, and they're not necessarily hunting right from a perch. And so, you know, they don't want to be using as much energy. So having a lower wing load is actually beneficial to them. Or birds like that fly out at sea, like albatrosses and things like that, that are just up in the air a long time. Those are birds that, again, you don't want to have to use a lot of energy. So lower wing loading is beneficial. All right, so this slide is showing some bills and talons. So owls have 4-toed feet, and they can swivel their outer front toes to the back if they need to, which can help with grabbing their prey, and it can also help them just perching too. Their feet are really, really obviously important in hunting. There are some owls that will hunt and grab birds, or not birds necessarily, but things like insects in their bills versus their feet. But again, for this type of predator, their feet are very important. Their bills are also important though, because if they're a species that, you know, needs their bill to tear into their food or to help feed their young parts of food, those bills are really important. And they also can use their bills to communicate that they are, you know, irritated or, you know, I've had actually multiple owls in my hands that have bill clacked at me. So they use their owl or their bills to show that, again, they're not very happy with you. Hopefully this works. So you hear that?
Yep, we can hear that.
Okay, good. So that is a great horned owl, you know, clapping its bill together, and it is not happy when it's doing that. So let's see. Oops. Not letting me in that. There we go. Oops. Oh, stop that. There we go. All right. Owls have directional hearing. So they have these asymmetrical ear openings, as you can see, on the sides of their head. Well, you can't see, actually. I shouldn't say as you can see, because you actually can't see through those feathers. But in this picture in the upper right, they have these kind of half moon shaped ear openings that are actually really big compared to other birds. And they go down deep, and they're on asymmetrical, they're on different sides on each side of the head, or different parts of each side of the head. And so what happens is this allows the owls to focus and actually determine exactly where their prey is when they're hunting. What also helps with that is their big satellite dish of a face. So I guess you could think of it as, so if you put your hands, if you have big hands behind your ears, you know, you're going to hear sound better. Like if I do that right now, I hear myself speaking better. Well, that's what owls have on the front of their faces, and they have special feathers and harder feathers that help filter that sound in so that they can hear better. They also have a complex medulla, which is kind of the processing sound, the processing part of their brain that processes the sound. And they have around 95,000 neurons in the barn owl alone. To give you a little bit perspective, that's 10 times the amount that humans have, and 3 times the amount of an American crow. Going one step further, since they really depend on their ears too for hunting, this is a great gray owl here. Owls often use the same hunting grounds. So it's usually different than their daytime roosting area, but usually not that far away from their daytime roosting area. They'll also, as I said, some will hunt from a perch, but some will actually fly and swoop low over open areas, such as grasslands or even marshes, to go for their prey. Usually they'll wait for the prey to appear again before they swoop down with wings. But again, that prey, like say in the wintertime, doesn't always appear, and they may have to just use their hearing to find it. Let's see. Oops. This video doesn't want to start either. Hold on one second. Oops.
Oh, well, we can always do, Tara, when we send the recording, we can include these links to the videos. That way folks can still watch them.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it's doing this. I did a practice run with a couple people from their Zoom computers and they worked fine. So I don't know what's going on. Such is the luck of Zoom, I guess. I might be able to show them at the end if I'm not in this format too. So maybe we'll go back. We'll see. But that video, it was a video of the great gray owl and hunting, basically using his hearing alone to hunt. And it's pretty neat because they're such powerful animals that even though they hardly weigh that much, they can break through. I think they've been able to break through snow that like a 176-pound person can stand on. So they're pretty powerful when they go in and swing their legs forward to go for their prey item. In terms of males versus females, most owls actually look pretty similar to one another. They lack that sexual plumage dimorphism, which means that males and females look different. Like say a female cardinal looks different than a male cardinal. Well, in owls, unfortunately, in most cases, you don't have that. There are a few species that do look different, but most don't. That being said, females are usually larger than male owls. You can't really tell when you're looking at them unless you observe owls for a while during the mating season and are in the same areas every day. You can usually tell which one's the male and the female. But just to see an owl, you probably wouldn't know. But the females are larger primarily because of egg production. You know, that takes a lot of energy. They have to be able to defend the nest if needed. And also it helps provide more incubation heat. And then also male owls usually have to help the females hunt because when the female is incubating, she's not out hunting and the male is the big provider. So him being smaller allows him to be a faster flyer too, and he can hunt using less energy. Males usually have lower pitched calls as well. So if you're out listening to owls during the mating season, you may be able to discern male from female. However, that can be challenging. Which brings me to calls. So owls aren't songsters like most songbirds are. They actually do make some fun sounds. They're just do it in a different way. So they'll hoot, they'll scream, they'll screech, they'll whistle, they'll squawk, they'll even bark. They'll caterwaul, which they'll call back and forth to each other. And they do these sorts of calls for different reasons. Courtship, if they're trying to woo a mate in, and many male owls will actually do pretty neat courtship displays, and those will usually end with the male presenting a female with some sort of prey item, and oftentimes if she accepts it, then she has accepted him as a mate. They're also super territorial, so they will call quite often to establish their territory and maintain their territory. Also, they will communicate with their mates. And then if there is a predator present, they will also often call because of that as well. When they call, they will inflate their throat into a ball and call. And as you can see here, you don't always see this white of a great horned owl. It mainly comes out when that throat is inflated, and then you can see that ball. You know, it kind of makes him look bigger and scarier, but it definitely shows that he probably means business. So with that, I want to go in and discuss some of our owls we have here in Illinois. We have 8 species of owls, and I think that you possibly could have a chance to see them all if you try semi-hard over time, or know some people that are really good at finding owls, and you can go out with them too. Our biggest owl that is common in Illinois is our great horned owl. This guy is about 22 inches in length. He weighs around 3.2 pounds. These are all averages. And he has a wingspan of around 4.6 feet. And another thing about these guys, they're kind of a generalist species. So whereas some species are really specific about habitat type, you know, these guys have been found all over the place. I mean, they do like forest, that's their primary habitat, but they've been seen in the tundra, in towns, islands. So they're pretty variable in where they're willing to go. Which brings me to their food. They have a wide variety in their diet. They'll eat all kinds of food, including skunks. Clearly not a great sense of smell. In terms of nesting, they will use nests made by hawks. They'll use snags, which are broken off tree trunks. When they hunt, they will hunt from a perch and wait until they see whatever it is that they want to eat, and they'll do an aerial dive then to capture their food. And as you can see, they're found throughout North and South America. The other thing about this map too is purple means that it's found year round in those areas. So most owls are non-migratory. There are some that migrate, but for the most part, most owls will stick pretty close to where they fledged from, or not semi near those areas. I mean, they all can't use the same space because again, they're very territorial, but they're not going to migrate super far away. And if you want to know what the great horned owl sounds like, it's probably one of the most common bird calls that people know. It's your typical hoo-hoo call, and I will play it for you. Hopefully this works. So there you go. It's a pretty basic call, and the calls I am playing to you guys, for you guys tonight are common calls that these birds use, especially during the breeding season. You know, they're the ones that you're most going to commonly hear when you're out prowling or looking for these birds. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to play that again. Here we have our barred owl. So this owl is a medium-sized owl. It's around 18.3 inches in length, weighs about 1.6 pounds. And like I said, these are averages. Keep in mind the males are going to be a little smaller and the females are probably going to be a little bigger. And also they have a 2.5-foot wingspan on average. They are found in North America, and you can see they're found in mainly large portion of Eastern North America, but they also cross up here, and you can find them in the Pacific Northwest, which I'll talk a little bit more about later too. They have been known to be in forest, specifically even more so bottomland forest. But the thing about these birds is they have exploded all over Illinois. Over 100 years ago, there were not a ton of them, and now they are everywhere. They have done really well. They're one of those species that if you're out during the day, you may see. I see a pair of these regularly where I live, and I can guarantee when they will be out and when I will go flush them usually. So they're pretty neat birds, and they'll even call during the day sometimes. Even though they're more of a primarily a nocturnal hunter, they do some daytime activity. And another thing that's kind of interesting is this is one of the owls with black eyes, and most black-eyed owls are primarily nocturnal hunting owls. This bird nests usually in a cavity. I want to say in captivity, but no, it's not nesting in captivity. But it usually nests in a cavity, and it can also use things like snags too, so those broken off tree trunks. And it will hunt like the great horned. It'll take an aerial dive from a perch. And here is what it sounds like. It's probably one of the most fun sounding owls in terms of owl calls. It does your classic who cooks for you call if you're wondering what it kind of sounds like. Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all? And this is also a fun call because many are pretty good at imitating it. So, you know, if you go out and you want to imitate this call, you may or may not get a response from one of these. But again, they're pretty territorial. I know out at Ellerton Park, there are a lot of these. And on a nice night, you can, once one gets going, it's like they're all going. And they're caterwauling back and forth to each other, and they could kind of sound like crazy monkeys. So here you go.
I wonder if maybe you can turn that up. I'm not sure if everybody could hear that. I heard like a little bit, but.
Let's see. Is that, you can't hear it? I'm trying to see.
I think we can hear it just a little bit. It's weird.
I don't know that I can turn it up anymore. Let's see. I have the share computer sound. Let me try hitting that again. Let me try playing it again and see if that made a difference. But I thought I had it turned on. Let me see.
There we go.
Oh, so it must have got turned off. I thought I clicked the button, but. So I'm going to go back so you can hear this beginning a little bit more. All right, I'll stop it there. So I'm glad you guys got to hear that. I apologize if you didn't hear it very well to begin with. This is what happens when I try to add fun things to my talk. Whoops. All right, here we have the eastern screech-owl. So this is another common owl in Illinois, and It is found, as it says, in the east primarily, but there is a western screech owl too. It actually has different color morphs. And so there are around probably a third of the eastern screech owls that are the red color morph. And these guys they're neat little birds. They're pretty tough little birds. They're pretty territorial little birds. I remember I was out doing a survey for owls and nightjars once, and I use a quick playback on my surveys, and I was using, which is basically playing their call back at them just one time to see if the owl is in the area. And I was right there playing it, and I was at the Iroquois County Conservation Area, and I just played the call, and all of a sudden something hits me in the back of the head. And I realized, turns out they had a nest right by where I was, which I didn't know. I was in the dark. So yes, they were nesting in a tree super close to where my car was parked and where I'd stopped to try to listen for them. So again, these guys are very territorial. I'm lucky that it didn't have its talons out, and it just kind of, I think it hit me with its wing, luckily, but still, these guys, when they're nesting, not just them, but other owls, I know like great gray owls, which you could find in northern Minnesota and Canada, they've been known to take eyes out of people during the nesting season because they are so territorial. So you just always be wary that especially if owls are nesting or have young, because they will defend their young or their nests. So. Again, these guys are little. They're around 8 inches in length. They are super tiny. Usually they don't even weigh more than half a pound. They have a 1.75 foot wingspan, and they're primarily found in forests. My experience with these guys is they like an open understory because they will forage. They're big insect eaters when insects are available. And if they can, they'll hunt them on the wing and capture them. So the other neat thing about these guys is here in Champaign, Urbana, they've done pretty fairly well in town. I know where I used to live in town, I had one really close to where we were. And I even had an owl box up for a while that one of these guys took over. It was a little red phase one. So it was really fun to watch it every evening. Get ready to go start hunting. It had this big wake up process that took like 20 to 30 minutes, which was always fun to watch. Also, like I said, they'll eat insects, they'll eat small little animals. They're cavity nesters. I was just talking about a box. So they'll use a natural cavity, usually made by something like a woodpecker. And then they hunt from an aerial dive, usually from a perch. And here is what they sound like. Think horse whinny. And let me know if you can't hear this, please. Hopefully it's turned on now. There you go. So again, these guys are so territorial that if you were out and you just did a little whinny, like a whistle, like I've had them come in and respond. But again, you don't want to be aggressive towards them. You don't want to harass them. And we'll talk about that more later.
Tara, before you move on, sorry. Someone asked if you could replay the great horned owl call.
Oh, sure. Yep, for sure. Well, let me go back. So I apologize. I thought I'd turn that sound sharing on, but apparently I did something, didn't click it right. All right, so that was actually two calling back and forth to each other. All right, whoops.
We do have a couple other questions. I don't know if you want to take them now. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there is a question about, do owls mate for life?
Most of the time, yes. They're usually monogamous, at least for sure during the breeding season, and some for life. However, if the mate is killed, they will find a new mate. So hopefully that answers.
Yeah.
Question.
Yeah. And then someone also
Okay.
commented that when you were talking about the screech owls, that they do not have black eyes, whereas you mentioned that sometimes the ones that are nocturnal will have all black eyes, but.
Yep. So there are still owls that have yellow eyes. I mean, a lot of owls have yellow eyes that will hunt at night. And a lot of them are actually very active at dawn and dusk too. You know, these are observations people have made over time. I was just primarily, I guess, stating that what scientists or researchers have found are that the black-eyed owls specifically seem to be more primarily the nocturnal hunters. But yeah, that's in terms of the yellow-eyed owls or the red yellow-eyed owls, since they do have variable eye color, they don't always necessarily hunt like daytime versus nighttime. But yeah, I just thought it was kind of neat that the black-eyed ones do primarily hunt only at night. So
Cool.
That's kind of confusing. I apologize. All right, so here are winter owls. If we're lucky, we get snowy owls in the winter. So snowy owls are tundra nesters. They breed up in the tundra, and they're a large owl. They have about they're about 2 foot in length and weigh on average 4 pounds. They have a 4.5 foot wingspan on average. And again, these are birds that breed in the tundra. And I know many scientists are studying these birds right now, especially because the tundra habitat, the ecosystem is changing. You know, it's more, the grasses and everything are changing up there. And so they're trying to figure out how this is affecting these birds, because they actually have declined, unfortunately. For us, well, it's not so lucky for these guys, because what happens is if they don't have enough food, which is primarily lemmings on their breeding grounds, then they can't all survive the winter. So owls have to leave to find food. And this is a migratory bird. And so we will sometimes get them as far south as Champaign, Illinois. A few years ago, there was a big eruption here, which means there are just a lot of them down here for food. And we had quite a few, and airports were having problems, and because they hunt the big grassy fields around the airports. They'll hunt egg fields, but they usually look like a plastic bag out in an egg field. But they're a really neat owl. And this winter, if you've heard about the snowy owl we've had, there's been one over by Sydney this winter. And I did go see it back when it was shortly after it was first spotted. And I got really lucky because it was really far out in the field, but then I went to leave and it flew right at my car, towards my car, and perched on the telephone pole right above me. So I was really excited because I just love these guys. They're neat owls. My first encounter with one was one that sadly was injured. And that was that big eruption year a while back. And I thought it was going to die, because when I felt its breast, where, you know, its breast muscles are, it felt like it had no muscle fat left on it. But it survived, and it was such a friendly young male owl that it ended up, I was told, going to live at a nature center up in Alaska. So it was a pretty good success story, which was nice.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, it was. Again, these guys will do aerial dives for food. And another neat thing about them is they'll even run on the ground for food. So they're just, yeah, neat bird. And they're one of the birds that the males and females do look different from one another. So an adult male is almost all white, whereas the female has the black speckling on her feathers as well. And here is what they sound like. Not the small. It's like very strange sounding, like a big blast of wind or something. All right, I'm going to move on to the short-eared owl. So the short-eared owl is a medium owl. It's around 15 inches in length, weighs around a pound. It's found throughout America, and it's even found in some other parts of the world, as are some of these other owls too. It is a grassland nesting bird, and we unfortunately don't have a lot of grassland left in Illinois, and this bird is endangered. But I know they are trying to, they have a lot of programs out there right now to try to bring back grassland. And so it would be nice if we start seeing more of these sometime in the future. But until then, we'll just enjoy the ones we do see. It is also migratory. So you'll see there's different colors on this map. The blue is where it winters. So you'll usually see these down here in the winter. And if you're out driving country roads, especially at dawn and dusk, you can sometimes see these guys flying low over fields. And if you're really lucky, you'll see them flying around with northern harriers. They compete for the same food. So it's a really neat owl. And it's another weird thing this owl does is because it's a ground nester, and it nests in grasses usually, it will often poop on its nest to try to keep predators away. And again, it'll hunt on the wing. So it'll fly and soar over the grass or field and hover and then dive. And here is what it sounds like. Kind of like a little kitten.
I think it was last winter that there were a bunch of short-eared owls hanging out in some corn stubble right around Homer, right by Vermilion County. And we went out to try and see if we could, spot them just by driving by. And sure enough, we did. And we actually heard them as well. It was really cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow, that's a lucky sighting.
Yeah.
That's great.
So there was like 3 of them. I don't know if it was last winter or the one before.
Yeah, no, that's neat. No, they're a beautiful owl. They're one of my favorites. I just think they're really neat owls. So, this is, as I mentioned, the long-eared owl, which I kind of briefly talked about earlier because it has these cool owl tufts and neat face. It's a medium-sized owl, around 15 inches in length, about 3/4 of a pound, 1.5-foot wingspan. It's another migratory bird. So we will get these wintering here in Illinois. They generally are roosting in forest near open areas because they hunt these open areas because they, like the short-eareds, they'll hunt on the wing and hover and dive. They primarily eat small mammals, and like great horns, they'll use stick nests from other species. And here is what they sound like. So it's kind of like a monotonous, longer hoot than the great horned. Whereas the great horned will do it quicker and shorter and repeatedly. This guy is just kind of a monotonous, long, big hoot. Let's see. And then we have our little northern saw-whet-owl. These guys are another migratory bird that we will get here in the winter. Super cute little owl, a fierce little owl for its cuteness. They're tough little hunters. They're about 7.7 inches in length, around 80 grams, which is around the size of a robin, a 1.5-foot wingspan. These guys, they like forests. Usually you'll find them, especially in the winter, roosting in conifers. They like more open areas for hunting. They eat small mammals, but will even eat things like small birds during migration. They nest in cavities. And again, they're one of those birds that dives from or will do an aerial dive from a perch. And its call is kind of like a whistle that just goes on and on and on. Here you go. If you've ever listened to that a lot, it kind of just gets stuck in your head. And then finally, our not so common barn owl. These guys are found throughout the world, But in Illinois, they are threatened, although that is an upgrade. The Department of Natural Resources started a recovery project for these guys many, many years ago, I remember the exact year now. And it's done pretty well. So they made a lot of man-made boxes, both on poles and grasslands and on structures for these birds. And they have used them, which is great. Because again, that's a grassland bird and that habitat is greatly declined. Food, they eat small mammals. A family of these guys in 4 months alone can eat around 3,000 rodents. So that's big. They're great for population control of rodents. Farmers usually love them. As I said, they're cavity nesters, so they'll use man-made structures too. And again, these guys will aerial dive from gliding as well. And here is their scary screaming sound. So there you have barn owls. Yeah, it's a fun call. I just want to throw in some pictures of some of the nesting structures or cavities that these birds will use. The little screech-owl up in the top left. If you're familiar with Urbana, this is right on Race Street. And this tree was just kind of hanging over the street when we took this picture. And this little owl would just kind of stick its part of its body out during the day and warm itself up, I think, in the sun. And then the barred owl over here, it's looking down on its young, which is in a snag, a broken off tree trunk. This big platform nest, it's a great horned owl in there. And usually so they're nesting right now. And usually you can see them, their ear tufts sticking out of the nest, which is kind of neat if you're looking through the trees. And then here's our short-eared owl on the ground nesting. And then these are a couple examples of nest boxes that barn owls have used. Owls will lay really round white eggs for the most part. Screech owls usually start nesting March to May. Great horns usually, actually they're nesting right now. And so if you're out and about and you can see in the woods, you may see one of their nests if you're lucky. Barred owls, they'll usually start nesting around March. And northern saw-whet-owls, again, usually March, they're migratory, so they got to get back to their breeding grounds. Short-eared owls, usually around March too. And then finally, barn owls are another March bird. The other thing too is the number of eggs these birds lay is very dependent upon how plentiful food is. So if food's not very plentiful, they're not going to probably lay as many eggs. And they're asynchronous egg layers, so they won't lay all their eggs at the same time. And usually the first egg that gets laid is the bigger bird quicker. So a lot of times the younger birds will be either killed by a siblicide, or just will starve to death. Sorry, that's kind of depressing, but that's the bird world. I want to throw this slide in really quick, and Jennifer, maybe you can look at the answers real quick, but if anybody wants to guess quickly, I'll give you a few seconds. Who's your parent of these baby owls? These are all owls that you could possibly see in Illinois.
If you have a guess for which number any of those owls are, go ahead and type it in the chat. Somebody said number 2 looks like a great horned.
Yep, number 2 is a great horned.
Yep. Number 4 looks like a barred.
Yep, that's the barred. It's the black eyes.
So far, so good. Oh, number 3, someone said screech.
Yeah, that's the screech.
People are saying saw-whet is number 1.
Yeah, they're so cute. Oh, yep, that's number 1. They look totally different than the parents, so.
Yes. I don't know if anybody, does anyone know what number 5 is?
Any guesses?
I think we have a guess for number 5. Long-eared, someone guessed?
Not long-eared, it's our tundra one.
Oh, the Arctic. Somebody did say Arctic if it was the Arctic.
Okay, there you go. Yep, it is. It's the snowy owl. So.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for humoring me. All right, here are some predators and competitors. So if an owl is nesting, it has to worry about a lot of different problems or hazards, as you may call them. Raccoons have nice little skinny arms that can stick their hands into holes and steal eggs or nestlings. Snakes, they eat a lot of bird eggs. Mink, surprisingly, they are arboreal. They'll climb trees. They can get in boxes. I put squirrels in there because squirrels will take over cavities. So if you have your own cavity, make sure you keep it cleaned out because it doesn't take a squirrel long to take it over. Up in the upper right, those are bees. I'd had some boxes up a long time ago and I had bees take over one of my boxes. That box was never used again. And then down in the bottom left, we have barred owls. They will eat other owls. Some owls will eat other owls. And then there are European starlings. They will take over and use cavity boxes too. Unfortunately, owls face the same challenges most other birds face. Habitat loss is a big one. Deforestation is huge. As I said, the majority of owl species are found in the southern hemisphere where deforestation is happening at very large rates. Here in Illinois, our bigger problem for the most part is unmanaged forests. So we have a lot of invasive species come in and take over the understory, which has historically been open and easier to hunt for a bird that forages. But because of these invasive species, it's changing the dynamic within those forests. There are less natural cavities. I always tell people, leave your dead trees if it's not going to hurt anything because, you know, animals will use them. Climate change, ecosystems are changing everywhere. Pesticide use, that's really done a number on insect populations. And a lot of these birds will eat insects, as I've said. Predation from other species, and collisions. So owls have tunnel vision when they're hunting, and you know, like hawks, they'll hunt those medians of roads and because those grassy strips in the middle, and they often get hit by cars that way or flying across roads to go for prey. And then poison. Unfortunately, people are still using poison sometimes, and as a result, it's a trickle-down effect and birds can die from it. And then finally, competition, which is why I put the northern spotted owl in here and the barred owl. The barred owl is an owl that is more competitive than the spotted owl. And the spotted owl is an owl found in the Pacific Northwest that is endangered because primarily loss of habitat due to logging. But this guy has greatly moved into its habitat, and because it's the more aggressive of the two, it is winning. And I put this in really quick because I work for a program that studies wetlands, grasslands, and forests throughout the state. And what we're finding, and this program's been going on since 1997, it's called the Critical Trends Assessment Program, is that even though we're still seeing, like, say, looking at white oaks, we're still seeing the nice canopy layers in our forests, those big old oaks, but what we're not seeing is the shrub layers. They're greatly declining. And we have all these invasive species, such as garlic mustard, which is an invasive, that are coming in. And because these invasives are coming in, the natives are not surviving. Now I'll talk about something more positive. Owl prowling. So if you want to go owl prowling, this was also this little slide, that picture right there, that was the little owl that was in my backyard for a while. I called her Kit. But things to consider are time of year. Time of year is pretty important. During the mating season, they're going to be calling a lot more. Fledging time, you're going to have a bunch of really clumsy little owls whose parents are still going to be helping them in terms of providing food for them and, you know, while they're learning to fly. So you may see them then too. Species natural history. So all those things I talked to you about in terms of habitat, behavior, how their plumage looks, and especially their calls. That's really important so that you can distinguish between them. And then finally, I put birding forums. There are a lot of people that bird. Birding has become so popular, even so much more so this last year, that if you really want to see owls, you can usually find some sort of forum or social network that will help guide you to where specific birds are being found. If you want to go out during the day, I really like in winter owl prowling because you don't have the foliage out in the trees. You can see things better. There's usually more species around too, which is really neat. And also things to look for, mobbing. So other birds hate owls. They hate any like predator bird like hawks or owls. So if you're seeing a bunch of mobbing during the day, some of the times it's because there's an owl around. So if you see a lot of other like crows or jays or little birds and they're all getting angry and chasing something around, often you can see that owl flush. And it may not be an owl, but sometimes it may be. The big thing to look for if you're walking around in the woods in an area you think owls may be, because it seems like good habitat, is look for whitewash, which is their poop on the sides of the tree. This is a branch that has whitewash on it, or especially on the trunk of a tree or on the ground below a tree. So you'll see this whitewash on the branches because these birds will often use the same roosts over and over again. And so you'll see their pellets, which again on this slide, those are northern long-eared owl pellets. You'll see their pellets, you'll see the whitewash, and usually if you look up into the tree and crane your head enough, if you're lucky, you'll see the actual owl up there. Again, pellets are all different sizes depending upon the owl they come from. The bigger the owl, the bigger the pellet. Just another thing to think about. Excuse me. And then feathers, you'll probably see some feathers because they do preen themselves. If you're going out at night, always check the weather. That's really important. If it's really windy, you're not going to probably have much luck. I've never had luck. And so I don't go out on windy nights. They don't tend to be active or call on windy nights. Always be really wary of your surroundings. Don't trespass. Don't go areas you're not supposed to go. You know, it's nice if you know people that have land you can go to, or you may just drive country roads and look for the birds to just be on telephone poles or hunting fields. Excuse me. Or the other thing to do is, again, know your calls. If you do use playback and that's the bird's own call to see if it's present, I caution you, I would not play it more than once. And I wouldn't play it if you're near traffic of any sort, because again, you don't want to hurt these owls in any way. You don't want to affect, you know, them like leaving their habitat. You don't want to do anything that's going to potentially harm the bird in any way. So don't harass them is what I'm saying. You know, a whistle or one call, I think is probably fine, but just know your surroundings and make sure the owl will be safe. Drive, as I said, those country roads. Again, I've seen these birds, different species, many, many times perched on telephone poles. So they're always good to look at. Try to avoid noise interference. I mean, these guys are going to know that you're there. They can hear fantastic. But if you're walking quietly versus sounding like a giant herd of elephants, it will make a difference. And just be patient. It may take some time. If you do hear one calling and it sounds like it's getting closer, look for a silhouette. If it's a nice moonlit night, which I would suggest, because you'll see better. And they can see better too if they're hunting. Look for those silhouettes. And with that, I will just briefly talk about attracting owls. So if you are interested in having owls at your property, I would suggest native plants, especially, you know, a nice big patch that includes grasses that their prey items may use. Also, trees are very important. I would have a mix of deciduous and possibly some conifers because, again, those wintering birds like those saw-whets and those northern long-eareds will usually roost in those conifers especially. Leave dead things as is. They'll provide good nesting habitat. And bird baths. So you may not think of this because they do get some of their moisture from the food that they eat, but they will drink out of bird baths. And finally, nest boxes. If you're interested in putting nest boxes out, you might want to think about a south or east facing one just because owls like to be warm too, especially when they're nesting. Screech-owls and barred owls will use them, so keep them clean. If you have really good habitat or grasslands nearby, you can think about putting up a barn owl box. And the last thing there is, so the Cornell Lab of Ornithology is fantastic, and they actually have a link on their website that you can go to that you can pick the bird you want to have a nest box for, and it'll take you through like the region and where you live and give you the best information for the species that you'd like to have, which is fantastic. So if you want to learn more about owls, take a hike, get outdoors more. Public parks, however, be cautious of that. Many close at night. There's a lot of research projects that are going on. These are just a few. Owl Research Institute, Bird Studies Canada, Project OwlNet. Some of these are volunteer projects. Also, the Cornell Lab, as I just mentioned, they have so much information about owls. Owls, that's one group of birds you can easily find information on. Usually there's a lot of good owl books out there too, as well. And here in Illinois, we have our monitoring of owls and nightjars in Illinois program that I coordinate. And that's all volunteer based too. And they're just rural routes that you drive in your car for the most part and get out and stop and listen for birds to monitor their trends. And with that, since I've talked quite a bit, I will take any additional questions if there's time and say thank you for sitting in on this presentation. It's hard to stop talking because I just have a lot of stories, but I can't keep talking. So thank you.
Thank you, Tara. That was great. No, I understand you can talk about owls forever. There's just so many, there's so many different species too. So there's always a lot of different things to talk about. So we did have some questions coming in. A lot of people are saying, really great presentation. Thank you so much. And all that. I'm going to try to scroll through to the questions that were asked earlier. Maybe see which ones we haven't talked about and see if we can maybe answer some of those. And again, people, I know we're going a little bit over the time, so if you need to leave, that's definitely okay. We are still recording this, and I will make sure that it gets sent to everybody, so you will not miss out. We had a question about eggs and how big the eggs are, and I think that probably varies depending on the species. Is that correct?
Yep, it does. It does. I mean, like the screech-owl is going to have a pretty tiny little egg. Oh, I don't know, like a inch to like, a little bit bigger. But yeah, it does vary by species. The great horned will have bigger ones than, like I said, the screech-owl. So, I mean, not extraordinarily big or anything, but definitely a little bit.
Definitely. I've never actually seen a real owl egg. It'd be interesting though. We also
very
have
white.
Yeah.
Most of them. Yeah.
Most of them?
Yeah.
Someone asked if there's ever been extra pair mating in owls.
So there has in a few of the species. And I think it's usually like if food is really plentiful. I know I'm trying to remember, sometimes a male will mate with two females, but again, one may get kicked out later on, but it has happened, yes, but it's not common among owls.
Interesting.
And I don't know, I don't know every owl in the world, so it's
right.
possible that happens with some species, but it's not, like I said, super common. But
right. Okay, we had a couple of questions about when you talked about poison that owls can encounter and whether or not that was like, if you're referring to, rodenticides or what specifically kind of poison. And someone asked if lead poisoning is an issue in owls like it has been for eagles.
I think it depends on what the owl is eating, but I know I know it's still happening with eagles regularly. I know if any of you are familiar with the Illinois Raptor Center over in Decatur, like they're regularly almost like it's really sad, the birds that still come in because of lead poisoning. So it can it's still out there, it's still being used. So yeah, I don't think it hits the owls as much as say the eagles, but I definitely and certainly think it can. And then the rodenticide, that's exactly more what I was talking about in terms of how many of the owls can get poisoned unfortunately. So.
Yes, definitely. Awesome. Well, I don't know how much time we all have, so I don't want to keep you too past the time, Tara, but if you have time for maybe like a couple more questions, we can do that. If not, that's also okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. I can do a couple more.
Someone made a comment about most owls having furry feet, and yes, most of them do have feathers on their feet as well.
Yeah, they do. And I don't know if you noticed, and I had some little notes, but because of my screen sharing, it was kind of weird and I couldn't see my notes, which was probably for the best because I probably would have talked longer. So like, I don't know if the snowy owl versus the great horned owl, if you noticed that the snowy owl actually had like a bunch of feathers covering its toes. And that's because of where it lives. It lives in the tundra and it's on that cold ground. And so having those extra feathers really makes a big difference with that species in particular.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see. You wouldn't expect there to be feathers on their feet, but it's so cool.
Yeah, well, and then there's some that don't have many feathers on their feet because of just, you know, the type of habitat they're in too, you know, they don't necessarily need a bunch of feathers.
Right, right. Let's see. Someone asked, this is the last question that I can see, is do you find groups of winter short-eared owls in one locale as they do in Vermont? So I guess they're asking about if we often find groups of short-eared owls in the winter around here.
That's actually a good question. So I know I talked about owls being really territorial, but the migratory ones actually will group up more. So like your short-eared owls you may find together. Sometimes you'll find long-eared owls closer together. Same like for the snowies. And short-eareds in particular, the times that I've seen them in the winter, if I've been fortunate, I may see like 2 or 3 not too terribly far from each other. So it definitely can be the case. And I know, Jennifer, you'd mentioned the ones that you
Yeah, yep.
So if you're really lucky, you'll see more than one. I'll say that.
Yes. It's all about luck, as you were talking about, you know, going for prowling for owls and whatnot too. But the winter, like you mentioned, is a really good time to do it just because there's no foliage and a lot of the owls are starting to mate and breed right now. So it's a really good time and you really just have to kind of be patient, as she said. But thank you again, Tara. This was so much great information, and I am so glad that we were able to host you tonight for this program.